Courtney Bauman. I work for USAC Study Abroad, and we are one of your study abroad options as a UTSA student. The topic that I'm going to talk about today is around financial planning and scholarships related to study abroad. And I'm going to speak about that like in a broad fashion that hopefully it will be useful for you regardless of the kind of study abroad program that you do, if you go on a USAC program or not. This is really designed to give you some tips and some resources to be able to financially plan for your study abroad program. And then I will also talk some about USAC and just use some USAC resources as examples of the kinds of resources that are available to you. This is being recorded, and then you'll also get the slides from this presentation will also be available to you. There are some like hyperlinks and things that you can click on. And of course, I welcome your questions. You're welcome to type them into the chat, or if you want to ask out loud at the end of the presentation. Always happy to answer questions. And then I also just want to go ahead and put my email in the chat as well. And as you all have questions at any point, you are welcome to contact me. I am the USAC person for UTSA, so I'm your USAC representative all the time. Okay, so diving right in. Okay, just thinking about questions around planning financially for study abroad. Some of the most common questions that you may have or that you may hear is study abroad affordable? Can I afford to study abroad? How much does study abroad cost? What about financial aid? How does that work? Does financial aid work with study abroad? Is there extra funding like scholarships? What's the timeline for that? So lots of questions, and I think some of the most common and the most important questions that you're probably asking in relation to study abroad are around the finances. So we're going to kind of dive into some of these things right here. And what I have, this graphic here is showing you an average cost of a semester abroad on some USAC programs. So I think that's one of the like big looming questions is like, well, what does it cost? And if you've been in for advising or to some of the other sessions through your study abroad office, you probably already know that the answer to that question is there's not one answer, because the cost of a program typically does vary somewhat depending on where the program is and what the cost of living in the country or the city where you want to study is, the length of time that you'll be there. Are you doing like an entire semester or an entire academic year abroad, or are you doing a shorter summer program or winter program? And all of these things impact the overall cost of a program. So highlighting here, like the average cost of a semester abroad on some of USAC programs, the numbers that you're seeing include the program fee, which is your tuition, housing, estimates for airfare, estimates for food, personal expenses, and visa costs. And these are programs in some of the most affordable locations where you can study abroad, but you can see that you can do a semester abroad for around the same, or in some cases even less than what it costs you to study in the United States for a semester. And these are semester costs. A summer program will be a bit less because you're there for a shorter amount of time, but just to kind of give you, just give you the idea that doing a semester abroad or a term abroad doesn't have to cost like way more than what it costs you to be at home studying. In some cases it can be the same. In some cases it can even be less. Something else that you should know is that typically financial aid can apply. We'll get into that a bit more. And of course, your study abroad office there at UTSA, they can point you in the direction of resources and additional information about that. And we'll kind of dive into some of these other questions as well. One thing that I want to talk about briefly is program location, since the cost of living where you will study is one of the biggest factors that will influence the overall cost of your program. And there are a lot of countries out there where the cost of living, great, amazing places to study abroad, where the cost of living is similar or in some cases less than the cost of living in San Antonio or in Texas. So those are things to consider when you're looking at your programs and thinking about affordability. If you know that affordability is like, at the top of your list of priorities, then I would say do let that factor into the kind of program location that you choose. So you can imagine that often, programs in places like Western Europe, where the cost of living is higher, are going to be a bit more expensive than programs in Latin America or some Asian countries or Eastern Europe, where the cost of living is a bit more affordable. So that's something to consider, but not just the cost of living in the country. You should also look at the specific city where the programs are located, because that can influence the overall cost of a program as well. I mean, just like in the United States, like it is more expensive to live in Manhattan than it is to live in San Antonio. And the same is true for other countries as well. So I'll point out here, for instance, like we have a program in Lüneburg, Germany. It's not in Berlin. The cost of living in Lüneburg is going to be a bit more affordable. And that's the case with a lot of USAC programs. Like we are in some pretty affordable locations and affordable cities within countries as well. So those are just, in terms of picking location, those are some things to consider. Okay, so financial resources, and here we're going to dive a little bit into some of the resources that USAC has. We'll take a look at our interactive budget sheets, a bit more about financial aid. We'll talk a little bit about scholarships, and then flexible payment options as well. So that's one thing. Students who apply for a USAC program, we do have flexible payment options. Students who are using financial aid can apply those to our programs. And then with USAC fees, and this is the case, I think, with many study abroad programs, you're not necessarily paying per credit. So you could take 12 to 15, 16 credits in a semester, and you'll actually pay the same program fee. So one thing I want to point out, this is a useful tool in calculating the full cost of a program. So on our website, we have interactive budget sheets for every program. And if you wanted to check it out or follow along, you could at usac.edu. For every program and for every term, you'll see these interactive budget sheets and the fees and deadlines. And so this is a way to see what the program fees are, but then also to get a sense for what some of the additional expenses for a program will be. Like, okay, if you are going to, in this case, we have a program in Montevideo, Uruguay, and we are looking here at a spring semester there. So, what can you expect to spend on a flight to Uruguay? This gives you some estimated expenses if you do a group flight or an individual flight. What can you expect to spend on things like meals or local transportation? And you'll see here there are two columns. So one is showing you the cost in the local currency, and then one is showing you what that converts to in US dollars. And you'll see for many of these, it's a range, because like what one person will spend on personal expenses versus another is going to vary some. So it kind of just shows you a range. And what you'll do in the interactive portion is you'll plug in numbers here based on what you have researched, or maybe what you kind of expect to spend based on your own habits. And then it'll add up and it'll show you a number at the bottom. And that's the total program cost, to kind of help give you a sense beyond the program fee, beyond the flight, kind of everything that you need to be taking into account. And you'll also see that there is a field here towards the bottom where if you already know, okay, like you get this amount in a Pell Grant or other financial aid or other scholarships that you know will apply to your study abroad program, then you can plug that in and it will subtract that amount from the overall cost of the program. And that can help you get a sense for how much of a gap you may need to be able to fill up with additional scholarships or funding from elsewhere. So definitely use these budget sheets. This kind of information will be available for any study abroad programs that you're looking into. And the different study abroad program sites, like it may look a little bit different, or if you're looking at a faculty-led program, or if you're looking at an exchange program, how the information is situated may look a little bit different. But this kind of information for any of the programs that you're looking into is available. So do, make sure and take advantage of these resources to get a comprehensive sense of what the total cost of a program can be, and also so that you can compare cost of programs if you're still kind of like considering what your options are. Okay, financial aid. So first thing to say about that is definitely you'll want to check with your study abroad office at UTSA to talk through financial aid and how it can work with your study abroad program. What kind, what is your specific aid situation at UTSA? What parts of your aid can transfer? Are there some parts that can't? Typically, federal financial aid can transfer to a study abroad program, but there may be certain regulations around that, like perhaps the courses need to apply to your degree plan or whatever. So those are things that you need to definitely talk with your study abroad office about. And then if you receive additional, let's say, scholarships or funding from elsewhere that you use during a regular semester at UTSA, you'll want to talk with them to see, which of that aid, maybe all of it, maybe some of it, can apply to your study abroad program, so that you'll just have all of that information. The other thing to consider with financial aid and how it relates to study abroad. So typically a shorter program will be less expensive because you're there for a shorter amount of time. So like a 5-week summer program typically will cost you less than an entire, 5-month semester program. But you also want to look at your financial aid situation and when do you get the most aid, because that could tell you when the most affordable term for you to study abroad will be. So if you get the most aid during a regular semester, in terms of financial aid, scholarships, or anything else, and that aid can apply to a study abroad program, then it might actually make more financial sense for you to do an entire semester abroad versus a shorter program, a shorter summer program or something. You may have more funding to put towards a longer program. The other thing to kind of think about is like, where are you getting the most bang for your buck? The longer you can stay abroad on a program, in a sense, the more you're going to get out of it because you're immersed in that culture, or if you're studying a language, you're immersed in that language for a longer amount of time. There are also some costs that will be the same if you do a short program versus a long program. So for instance, a plane ticket, that will cost you the same if you stay abroad for 2 weeks or if you stay for 6 months. So, those are just kind of things to think about as well around financial aid. But again, talk with your study abroad office at UTSA. They can definitely help you answer any of your own individual questions there. Okay, so USAC scholarships, and we'll talk a bit about other like national scholarships and some tips on those as well. Typically, when it comes to study abroad scholarships, you have a few different options that you'll want to look at. So there are scholarship options through UTSA to help students study abroad. So there's funding that way. If you apply to a USAC program, there are special USAC scholarships that you can apply for. And then there are also like national scholarships as well. So for USAC scholarships, when you apply to a USAC program, you'll fill out one scholarship application, and then you'll automatically get considered for any of our multiple scholarships that you may be eligible. And we'll look at what some of those are in just a second. In terms of the application process for USAC scholarships, there's no letter of recommendation. The essay questions tend to be like pretty short. So we want to make that application process as streamlined as we can for students. Deadlines, typically for summer and fall programs, your scholarship application deadline will be March 15th. And then for winter or spring programs, it'll be October 15th. And that's like a pretty standard timeline for a lot of scholarships, though some of those deadlines may be a little bit earlier. Okay, so a little bit about USAC scholarships. We have scholarships for, I'm gonna kind of like not exactly go in order here, but we have scholarships for every region where we have programs. So if you apply for, let's say, a program in Spain, then you'll automatically get considered for the Europe scholarship. Or if you apply for a program in South Korea, then you'll automatically get considered for the Asia scholarship. So that's one. And you'll notice that the amounts here for most USAC scholarships, between $500 and $1,000 typically. We also have a scholarship for first generation college students, military service, which includes active veteran and dependents of military. And then we also have a scholarship for STEM majors and minors. So you fill out one scholarship application, you get considered for any of those that you're eligible for. And it's possible, for USAC scholarships. Sometimes students even get more than one of those. In general, it is possible for you to get more than one study abroad scholarship. If you apply for everything that you're eligible, then you know it is possible to get more than one, and it's not uncommon for students to receive more than one study abroad scholarship. You know, once you've applied for one scholarship, it's easier to apply for more. You already have a good draft for the essay. You may already have references or letters of recommendation. You've been through the process and all of that. So, you know, my advice is apply for everything that you're eligible for. So that's a little bit about USAC scholarships. On our website, usac.edu/scholarships, you can see the full list. You can read about all of those. Our scholarship advisor is happy to work with you one-on-one, and certainly your study abroad office there at UTSA are great. I'm sure that they work with you guys on different workshops for scholarships, on helping with your essays for different scholarship applications. So definitely take advantage of like all of the resources that are out there to help you create the best scholarship applications that you can. All right. External scholarships. So, and I won't get too much into these because I imagine there have been different sessions already on external scholarships, and you can certainly get advised about those at UTSA. But there are things like the Gilman. If you receive a Pell Grant as part of your financial aid package at UTSA, there's the Gilman. They give up to $5,000, so a pretty big chunk of change. There's Fund for Education Abroad, and a whole host of others. These are just some like general tips to keep in mind about those, is that very often they have early deadlines. So it's kind of never too early to start planning to study abroad, and also to start identifying the specific scholarships that you're eligible to apply for, so that you can get those deadlines on your calendar and kind of be prepared to go for those. In general, award amounts for scholarships really vary. You know, like with USAC, $500 to $1,000, that can be kind of common. There are other scholarships like the Gilman that give up to $5,000 or even up to $8,000 if you're studying a critical language. So it really does vary. And another tip on that is, when you're applying for study abroad scholarships, don't necessarily plan to get the max amount that they give. So for Gilman, I keep using this as an example, they give up to $5,000. That doesn't mean they're going to give you $5,000. They might give you $2,500 or $3,000. So when you're putting your budget together, kind of, you know, err on the side of caution a little bit in terms of like factoring in maximum amounts, because you may not get the maximum amount that a scholarship gives. Depending on the scholarship that you're completing, other people may need to be involved in that process. So like for the Gilman, you'll have to have your study abroad advisor and a financial aid advisor certify that. You may need the letters of recommendation. Certainly you want to request those well in advance, because you know your faculty members or others are very busy and likely getting other requests as well. You may have to provide official transcripts or financial aid documents. So you can't start too early. You know, that said, not to discourage anybody, even if you find out about a scholarship a week or a few days before the deadline, like if you can make it happen, go ahead and apply. It could be worth, you know, putting in those extra hours. I've worked with many students over the years who in record time have been able to submit, you know, a Gilman application or something, and then do wind up getting funding. So I think, you know, the biggest piece of advice I can give is plan as early as possible, but also, you know, reality happens. When you find out about an opportunity to go for funding, take advantage of it if you are able to at all. As far as essays go, and I'm probably not the first person to give you this advice, an essay is typically going to be the most important part of your scholarship application. This is the piece where you really have a chance to win your readers over and tell them a little bit about yourself, tell them about your goals for your study abroad program and how you expect this experience to impact your life, and to really get them on board and want to give you funding. So it is, it's important that you have someone else, at least one other person, even multiple readers to help edit your scholarship applications can be really useful. Your study abroad office there at UTSA is great. At USAC, we can also help with that. And of course, you also have a writing center at UTSA that can help. Just keep in mind that each scholarship application typically the essay prompts will be a little bit different. They may be similar, they may all be asking for kind of similar information, but you'll want to make sure that you are answering those specific questions for that specific scholarship essay. So it's obvious to the reader that you put in time, that you read the directions, and that you're following the instructions, as you should be. So essays are critical. If writing an essay intimidates you like it does me and most people, don't let that stop you from applying to a scholarship. You have resources and help to help you throughout the process. You don't have to figure it all out by yourself. I mean, that goes for applying for scholarships. It goes for studying abroad in general. There are folks who really want to help you get funding. So just seek out those resources and use them early and as often as you need. I mean, I've worked with students on multiple drafts of scholarship essays, and it's okay to ask for help more than once even. Okay, I kind of already talked about some of these. So the Benjamin Gilman Scholarship for Pell Grant recipients, definitely if you get a Pell Grant, this scholarship should be on your radar. The Boren is great, especially for students who are interested in studying a critical language. For students interested in studying in Asia, there's the Freeman Asia. And then there is the Fund for Education Abroad, which is open to all students, but there are some specialized categories of funding within the FEA scholarship as well. There's actually a special USAC scholarship through FEA, as well as a general scholarship. I think they have a STEM scholarship, a rainbow scholarship, and some others as well. So, depending on the program that you're doing and your own background, you may be able to apply for multiple of these scholarships. Okay, moving on to thinking outside the box in terms of funding. So far we've kind of covered picking a program that's going to be affordable for you, figuring out how your financial aid can apply to your study abroad program, study abroad scholarships. So the reality for most students is that the funding that they use for study abroad is going to come from multiple places. So it's rare that a student, let's say, just already has an existing scholarship that's going to cover their whole study abroad program. I mean, if that's your case, that's amazing. You should go for it. But for the most part, students are going to be piecing together funding for their study abroad program a few different ways: scholarships, financial aid, and then maybe other things like working and saving, fundraising, all kinds of different ways that you can put together funding for your study abroad program. So we're thinking outside the box here. And one thing to say about that is, you don't have to come up with all of these brilliant ideas on your own. Probably if you Google creative ways to raise money for study abroad, you will find some cool ideas. We also have some USAC blog posts. So here's one, how I covered my expenses for study abroad, where this student talks about her own experience and how she funded or paid for her study abroad program. There are all kinds of blog posts on the USAC website specifically about finances and study abroad, as well as other topics. So check those out. And one thing I also want to mention, just in terms of preparing financially to study abroad, if you can think about it in smaller increments, you don't just have to go out and find $10,000. Any small amount that you can put towards this goal is going to help you get there, especially if you give yourself time to plan. And probably this example gets used a lot, but I don't know, if you go to Starbucks a couple times a week or 3 times a week, well, that's probably $15. Well, if you started putting that $15 away every week, you'd have almost $800 by the end of the year, which could cover your plane ticket depending on where you were going. So even little efforts like that can really help you make some serious progress towards your goal. One office that I want to point out, and maybe you guys are already aware of it, but many college campuses, including UTSA, have a student money management office. And this is a great office for you to be aware of. I have the link in there because they can help you with all things finances related, not just study abroad, but they can help you understand credit and student loans. They can help you come up with a budget, in general, for your life, to help you save money. And they can definitely also help you come up with a budget or a savings plan to plan for study abroad. So definitely check out that link if you're not already familiar with their services. You can set up appointments with them. They have all kinds of like resources on their website and everything that you can use. But this is another resource that's available to you for free as a student at UTSA with financial experts who can really give you some tips and some resources. So wanted to point that out. Working and saving, I imagine many of you already work and that you already need that money to help pay for your living expenses. So, you know, putting money aside can certainly be hard with the responsibilities and obligations that students have. But again, if you can think about it, I think in terms of any small amount that you can put away or any side job or extra job that you can do where you can specifically reserve that money for study abroad can really help you make progress towards your goal. Over the years in advising students, I have come across students who've done some pretty creative things to fundraise. Probably one of the most memorable things that I heard from a student is that he would donate plasma as often as he could and set that money aside for study abroad, get paid a little bit for that. Students have certainly done different fundraising projects like bake sales or, you know, selling t-shirts, or I worked with a student recently who they needed somebody to help clean the church that she went to. So, you know, weekly she would like help clean the church for a little bit of money. So even little things that don't seem like much, if it's just like $50 here or there, can definitely add up over time. You'll see that there are students out there who do crowdfunding to raise money for study abroad. So there are sites like Fund My Travel that can kind of help you do that. You're probably familiar with crowdfunding already. So those are just some kind of outside of the box things. You know, think about your own specific set of skills and what you have to offer and how you might be able to monetize those specifically to set money aside for study abroad. And then one other thing I want to mention, so two other things. So with USAC, we do have payment plans so that students don't have to pay, you know, the entire program fee all at once. Of course, if you're using financial aid, then you'll be able to put that towards your program fee. And then we do have a couple of programs where students can make a little bit of money while they study abroad. Typically, students are not working when they go abroad, but on our programs in Alicante, Bilbao, and San Sebastian, Spain, there's a teaching assistant program where you do make a little bit of money doing that. When it comes to making money while you study abroad, one important thing to consider is what kind of regulations there are around that. So for students on a semester program, you'll have a student visa that allows you to study in the country where you're going. Some of those student visas may allow you to also work or work part-time or work on campus when you're abroad, but some of them may not. So in general, I think typically students don't work while they study abroad, but if it is something that you're interested in pursuing, you'll just want to make sure that you understand like any legal regulations around that for while you're abroad. Okay, so for how to get started with some USAC resources, usac.edu is our website. There's a program finder where you can search for programs based on location, term, all of that. You're certainly welcome to contact us, and you guys have my email address, which I put into the chat. And so our website's great for all of that. You can also access blog posts and videos and all kinds of other good things to kind of give you a sense for what the programs look like on the ground. And yeah, at this time, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Feel free to type them into the chat, or if you want to shout it out, that works too.
I have a question.
Okay, great.
Is there like a known acceptance rate or percentage of how many recipients actually receive the scholarship or the scholarships?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it depends on the scholarship, what the percentage is of students who receive it. For the Gilman, off the top of my head, I think that's a national scholarship, but they give like hundreds and hundreds of awards every year. And I think the acceptance rate is something like 1 in 5 students who get that scholarship. So it does kind of vary per scholarship that you apply for, but sometimes it's higher than you think. Or for instance, specifically with the UTSA scholarships. I'm not sure what the acceptance rate is there, but it will vary. Some scholarships, maybe they only give like a few awards, but some of the national ones like the Gilman, FEA, they do give quite a few. And then with USAC, especially if you're eligible for multiple scholarships, most of our scholarships require a 3.0 GPA. If you're eligible for several, I mean, chances are that you may at least get one. And I don't know, Locke, if you want to add anything else about UTSA scholarships or scholarships in general there.
Yeah, so UTSA does have an IF scholarship where it's for UTSA students going in international programs. So that's a great one to apply to. Pretty much any student going on a study abroad program is able to apply. And as for financial aid for studying abroad, all we need you to have you do is just ensure your classes do transfer back and they are relevant to your degree. So that's just a conversation with your academic advisor and for them to petition the courses for your department. So between all the scholarship opportunities Courtney brought up, as well as the UTSA opportunities, you could definitely fund your study abroad and make all this quite feasible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, if there's one like message that I hope that you'll take away from this is that funding is out there for study abroad, and there are a lot of really affordable programs. So between those two things, studying abroad can be super affordable and super feasible. Absolutely. And don't psych yourself out by thinking like, oh, what are my chances of getting a scholarship? Because if you apply for everything you're eligible for, my experience in working with students is that students who apply usually get at least one. I see a question here from Sophia. Can I study abroad if I'm an international student at UTSA?
Yes. So Sophia, you definitely could. We do have international students join us for some of our opportunities. We had an international student actually do one in Mexico. So that was a really neat opportunity for them. I believe the student was either from Turkey or Iran, but they went there and they came back, and that was a really great experience for them. So if you're an international student, we highly encourage you to join us. And we are also in the international office. So if you're stopping by for paperwork or anything, stop by our office, have a conversation with us, and we'll be happy to walk through programs as well.
Yeah, definitely. International students should totally study abroad. It's like you can add another step in your international education. And one thing about USAC scholarships, international students can also absolutely be considered eligible for study abroad scholarships through USAC for sure. I see a question here. For specific programs, is there a specific amount of students who are allowed to go? In the case of USAC programs, there is a max number who we can accept. And there are some programs that do tend to fill up term after term. So we have a program in Valencia, Spain that is great for Spanish, but also has a lot of good courses for STEM students. And that program typically fills up. We have a program with Yonsei University in South Korea, which is also very popular, and that one typically fills up pretty early. But in general, if you're applying before the deadline of a program, as long as you apply before the deadline or apply pretty early, and as long as you meet the eligibility requirements, then you should be good to go. What other questions do you guys have? And I guess one thing too around like program capacity, as you're talking with the study abroad office or as you're talking with USAC, you can always ask. You can always ask about timing of a program. Do I need to apply early for this? Is it competitive to get into this program? That way, if hey, I do want to go to Yonsei University in South Korea, you can be planning to submit that application early.
I have a few questions.
Sure, yes.
So I don't know, because right now I'm like a junior, senior type of ordeal. But I was wondering, I'm like, do y'all have anything that for Germany currently, and has COVID affected like all this traveling for study abroad? So I'm just curious.
Yes, and yes. So yes, we do have, we have a program in Germany. We have a program in Lüneburg, Germany, where a student can do a semester, a year, or a summer. It's a great program. And then as far as like, how has COVID affected study abroad? Like your lives on your normal campuses, it has affected study abroad as well. It's, right now it's not possible for most students to be abroad, But at USAC, we are planning for the spring 2021 semester to be able to run some programs, and certainly for summer and fall and the terms after that, we are hoping that things will return to more of a state of normalcy where students can go abroad again as normal. You will definitely want to talk with your study abroad office at UTSA to find out what kinds of travel possibilities there are, and if there are any restrictions or regulations for UTSA students regarding travel in future terms. But for any of you here who are planning to go abroad in the future, like if you're thinking next summer or next fall, my advice would be to go ahead and plan to be able to do that and start doing your research and apply, when the application's open and everything, as you normally would. So I see a question here. Programs available for fall 2021. We certainly are offering our full portfolio of programs for fall 2021. Yes, we anticipate to be able to study abroad in full force, we hope, in fall 2021.
And I could chime in for that as well.
Yes, thanks.
So for travel, let's see, for travel with for later terms, we are still looking into it as an ever-evolving situation. With this upcoming spring, we are still anticipating that there may be travel. We're still looking into it. Of course, we'll get an official announcement from the university whether or not travel is approved. But we do tell students to sort of have backup plans. So be registered for UTSA courses just in case travel doesn't work out. We're really hoping it opens up at the latest by summer. So we are still looking into that as well. I did notice someone mentioned that they were sort of a junior, senior, and they're sort of later on. So regarding that, you can still study abroad as a senior. Just keep in mind, UTSA does have a 24-30 rule, where where of the last 30 credits you receive, 24 of them have to be from UTSA. So typically that limits seniors to summer programs for 6 credits. But there's always waivers you could fill out. So talk to your academic advisor about getting that waiver to allow you to take a little bit more credits if you want to do a longer term, such as the fall terms.
Yeah, and I see a question here too about refunds for study abroad programs. Yeah, that is a good question. And that students should be thinking about that. If you're planning financially or making financial commitments towards a study abroad program, like a flight or those kinds of things. So you'll want to be keeping aware of details related to COVID as you plan. In the case of USAC, in the case that USAC ever has to cancel a program, students get a refund. But you'll see on USAC's side and on any others, you'll see a full calendar for deadlines and fees and all of that. So you'll definitely want to take a close look at that as you're planning to study abroad and as you're planning financially to study abroad as well. I see a question here about terms for summer programs. For USAC programs, most of our summer programs have a summer 1 and a summer 2 term. So summer 1 is like, late May into late June or July. They're typically about 5 weeks long, 4 to 5 weeks long. And then summer 2 will start right after that. And students can do one of those terms or they can do both. And typically students are taking 1 to 2 classes per term. So you could complete, up to a full semester's worth of courses in a summer if you did summer 1 and summer 2. Any other questions I can help with? All right, well, I'm gonna put my email, it's on the slide, but I'm gonna put it in the chat too in case you wanna copy it in here so that you guys will all have it. Feel free to reach out, at any time with questions. But I really appreciate you coming to the session and I really appreciate all of your great questions.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Yes,
Yeah.
so USAC is one of our providers. We've worked with them for years. They have a great combination of affordable programming as well as a huge catalog all over the world. So they're a really great provider to look into. If you have any questions, so you could just reach out to me as well regarding different program options. I'm going to type my email in the chat. And please, if you haven't already, put your ABC 123 in the chat, just so we can mark you down for attendance and enter you into the raffle. We still have another day of sessions tomorrow, and we really hope to see you all there. We have a lot of events going on, but thank you so much, Courtney. Really appreciate the session you posted today.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the opportunity. Enjoy the rest of your great virtual fair and take care.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.